Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims! Yeah! No, we're not going to be doing that. We've finished. We've reached the end. We've finished Book 1, Surah 1, Al-Baqarah. No, it's Al-Baqarah. So we finished Al-Baqarah, the first surah of the Quran of the Muslims. And what we found out as we were reading through that is that Allah is very concerned with human money. He wants to amass every single resource and money type on earth into a big pile and then slide this pile across to his mosque and have it there. So you don't get any, I don't get any. Muslims, Jews, Christians, atheists, pagans, no humans are allowed to have any of his riches, despite the fact, though, Muslims, if I remind you, Allah said he's created all wealth and all the resources and all the women and children on earth as a bounty just for you, O Muslims. That's what he said in his book, the Quran of the Muslims. So it begs the question, if he's created this bounty for you, why has he then left it in the pockets of everybody else? Why weren't you just born right next to it? And why wasn't there like a big cloud going, "O Muslims, here is your bounty I have created for you in my grace and mercy and wisdom"? Why didn't he just do that? Who knows? But what we do know is he didn't just do that. He created his bounty for you, O Muslims, in the pockets of Christians and Jews, and they are the countries that have all the money and are rich and really loving it, having a great time and not generally living in horrible poverty. So it begs the question, if the bounty from Allah is in their pockets, why is Allah telling you that it belongs to you, O Muslims, if he's given it to them? Ever thought about that? Why would Allah give his bounty to other people who he wants you to kill and then tell you you can't have any money here or you're sinful? See, the way I see it is this. Allah knows the minds of his people. He knows that if he just tells you to go and kill the Christians and Jews, but you already have all the money, why would you need to go and kill them? If you have all the money and those guys are poor, you're not going to want to go and kill them, are you? What's the point? You're just going to be here enjoying your money, spending wildly on your lavish apartments, eating nice food, going to the dance with your many wives, you know, and blessing your children with even more expensive Quran studies. You'll be doing all that stuff if you already have money. And when it comes to obeying his end times genocidal prophecy and killing those fucking evil Jews and Christians that we hate so much, you won't be interested. So, it makes sense then, if Allah wants you to kill those guys, that he would create his bounty for O Muslims and take it right off you and give it to your enemies. Then, not only when he tells you to go and kill the Jews and Christians will you be really eager to do it because you want all that lovely money, you've got nothing better to do, O Muslims, because you don't have any money yourselves and you're in poverty. That is why he says to you, those who suffer poverty are the most loved by Allah. See what he's doing there? He's making sure you're jealous of those guys despite the fact that they've done nothing to you and you've never met them. And he's telling you that they're thieves, they've stolen your stuff, they've insulted your Quran, they've stolen your food, they've stolen your money. It's those guys you need to kill. I gave you that money, it's rightfully yours. Go and kill them or I'll punish you. That is what Allah says in the first surah of his Quran. So, it's understandable, really, from that position of ignorance and from the acceptance of the lies in the Quran of the Muslims, that Muslims actually feel this way towards Christians and Jews, despite the fact they've never met them, despite the fact that this is actually totally racist of Allah to say to you, those guys over there in other countries are sinful and evil and are devils and Satans and hypocrites, purely and simply because they haven't read his Quran. But he also says in the Moses section that he gave them their holy books. So think about this, O Muslims. If he gave them their holy books and his guidance is always true and everyone who follows his guidance always prospers, like he said in page 5, if that is true, then those guys are prospering because they're following Allah's guidance in the other books. So maybe if you aren't following this book, which is making you poor and warring against those guys, if you followed the book those guys got from Allah, maybe you wouldn't need to go to war, you'd already have money. But he doesn't want you doing that, so he says don't believe their lies, their holy books are false, despite the fact that he earlier said he wrote them. And how does he correct this conundrum that they've got the book that he wrote and they're doing really well, but they're also liars and hypocrites and not doing well and living in sin? Well, O Muslims, he says, "Ooh, I'm mind controlling the Christians and Jews." That's how he gets round his blatant fuck up, by tripping himself in his own lies. He says, I've given them their Torah, I've given them their gospel, so they're doing really well and prospering because of my guidance, but they're not doing it properly, so they must be living in sin, and when they tell you this, I'm mind controlling them to lie to you. But he also says when the mind control is working, it makes him angry. So how can he be mind controlling them successfully if it's making him angry watching them do what they're doing? See where I'm going with this? So technically, if Allah is mind controlling the evil Satan Jews and the hypocrite rabble shepherd Christians successfully, then they wouldn't be doing as well as they are. You wouldn't have to be jealous of them. They wouldn't have money for you to go and steal from Allah's bounty, and he wouldn't be getting angry at them doing it. So technically, if he's getting angry at them, the mind control isn't working. That's why he's getting angry, because he wishes he can mind control them, and he's told you that he can mind control them. But what do you know? He fucking can't mind control them, so they're off doing what they're doing with a book he didn't write or give to Moses, that God gave to Moses and Moses gave to them. And that is the reason they've got all that lovely money, and they're joyous and happy, and their countries and nations are rich and happy and not in poverty. That's the real truth. That's what we can tell through this whole book. Allah is setting you up for a fall here, Muslims, and I really hope you're listening to this. Despite the fact that he's told you, do not listen to this evil Jew apostate, this evil Jew, this evil British Christian, don't listen to his lies. Even though Allah is telling you that, use your head. Just use your head for a minute. Just look at this objectively. If Allah is real and what he's saying is true, then why, when he said everyone who listens to his guidance, which is always true, prospers, are Islamic countries not the richest countries? They're following his guidance, aren't they? Surely Islamic countries are the ones that are following Allah's guidance. So if what he said is true, and he also said, I will not set up my enemies, I will, ruin their lives and not let them have any money and not let them have lands. How is it that his countries, his Islamic countries, are the poorest, most poverty-stricken countries with all the curses, disease and war? And his enemies, who he promised he wouldn't set up and would curse and disease, the Christian nations, have all the wealth, all the education, all the, everything, technology, military, everything in their countries is bigger and better, more expensive. And guys like me, I retired years ago. I'm not even 50 yet, okay? I've retired almost 10 years ago through sickness. I had an injury. And despite the fact that I haven't worked since then, I've still got enough money to spend all day making these videos for free, dressing in a brand new t-shirt because someone whinged about my t-shirts always being the same. So I went out and bought this one. And I have all these lovely expensive books here which I bought in order to make sure my Quran reading was accurate. So how can I afford my own flat, all this lovely stuff, electric, water which is clean coming out my pipes, brand new clothes, books, computer equipment, studio equipment, and the time it takes to spend all week reading the Quran? How can I afford all that stuff at the same time as saying Allah is Satan and not following any of the Quran and actually saying the Quran is an evil book of lies? It just wouldn't make sense if what Allah was saying was the truth. Either he's not mind controlling me at all and I'm ignoring his guidance and that is the reason I'm doing so well in my life, or he's mind controlling me in order that I do well and you are not doing well because you're following his guidance. So he wants you to be poor and poverty stricken. I think that's really what's happening here. And it's just sad that you accept it. Just because some guy in the clouds, who's not even in the clouds by the way, he describes himself as living in the darkest depths. And I quote, he says, I will control you from the darkest depths. As in he is in the darkest depths right now. And he says, when you falter, and I quote again, I will drag you down. This is Allah in the book saying, I will drag you down to the darkest depths where you shall be companions of fire. So ask yourself, if this guy was God, what is he doing in the darkest depths to begin with when he could be in heaven? And when he is upset by you and you falter, why would he be dragging you down to be his companion and describe himself living in the darkest depths in fire? Do you think that God would be living in fire his whole life, punishing Muslims? Or do you think maybe the guy that lives in fire who's punishing bad Muslims is actually Satan? That's what you expect from the devil. Satan lives in fire. Satan lives deep below the earth. Satan punishes the bad people. Satan drags you down to be a companion of fire for eternity. That isn't God. So once again, through reading the Quran, through Allah's own words, he gives away that he is not the God that he claims to be. He's lied to you Muslims. And the reason that he lies to you is because, as we read in the end of Surah 1, he wants you to be in poverty. He has no use for human money and wealth and resources. Yet he makes sure other people aren't allowed to have them because you have to steal them and kill those guys after you've stolen it. But you're not allowed it either. You have to give it to the mosque so he can have it. So in conclusion, part 1, Surah 1, Allah isn't God. Allah is Satan. Allah doesn't love you. He wants you to live in poverty. And the proof of that is, look around the world. The countries with Islamic governments have no money, constantly at war, have all the poverty, have all the sickness, have all the problems. And his enemies, i.e. the Christian nations in Israel, who he vowed that he would not let them get set up, he vowed they would never be rich, they have all the money, all the technology, all the medicine, all the military, all the political and social gain. They are the guys running the show right now. But none of them believe in Allah, do they? So we move on anyway. So then after that, Allah starts going into more detail after that about how he demands total servitude. You aren't to question him. You aren't to even doubt him. You aren't even to feel grief, fear or pain. Despite the fact that you're a human being, when he's asking you to go and run at people who are a bigger, stronger force and shout Allahu Akbar and kill them, is he seriously expecting that when you're going to go and kill a bunch of people in a war, you're not going to feel fear? When you see your brothers die on the battlefield, or when you are injured and you can't fight anymore, you're not going to feel grief or pain? Even when you're giving your stolen loot away to the mosque, let's say you've just been on a campaign for 2 days to loot and pillage, and you drag all your loot back, and you're really hungry, and you want to go home to your wife and spend your hard-earned money that you've just pillaged, are you telling me when you have to give every single penny of it back to the mosque and not even ask for a thank you, you're not going to feel grief or loss or pain from that? Of course you are. So Allah is commanding you to do something which is physically impossible for you. Of course you're going to feel grief or pain, but as we know from the Quran of the Muslims, if you feel pain or grief, or you want to thank you, or you have any doubts or complaints, Allah will catch up with you because he knows, he sees and knows everything, and he will fuck you up. So there you go. Further proof that you cannot be a good Muslim. It's impossible. You cannot be a good Muslim because one command conflicts with another command, and all the commands have to be met all of the time. Otherwise, you're not worshipping him enough. But he's not doing you the courtesy of mind controlling you like either the evil Christians and Jews. At least they've got an excuse for why they're sinful. He's mind controlling them, remember? Even though it's not working very well, at least they can say, well, it wasn't our fault, Allah. You were mind controlling us to be that sinful. You guys don't have that excuse. The only thing you have the excuse for is when you don't follow Allah's commands, you can say, oh, it's because I was mad. That's it. Throughout the whole first surah, the only excuse he ever gives you is madness. So I ask you, Muslims, are you obedient to Allah in ignorance of what he's actually doing to you, or are you mad? Because it's literally the only two options he gives you in his own words. Then in the middle of the surah, he goes on to say unbelievers are the biggest threat to Islam, who should be made an example of with harassment, lies and threats. So ask yourself this. Why, if Allah is this all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipresent God who has future sight and can mind control people, why would tiny little humans in another country who don't even want to go to war with you and don't even care, why would they be the biggest threat to him? They're not a threat to him at all. He's a threat to them, and he wants you to go and kill them, and that is why you are a threat to them, and that is why they want to kill you. So when he tells you in the middle of the book that those guys over there secretly want to kill you, they don't secretly want to kill you, but if you want to go and kill them, they are openly going to kill you, and that is the reason why you're enemies with them. You should be brothers. Like, look at the Christians and Jews, O Muslims. Notice how since they stopped fighting amongst themselves and now they live side by side, both of them did really well from this. They've got tons of money. They're never at war with each other. When they're at war with each other, they support one another and it makes them strong. Why do you think Israel can survive this constant onslaught by its surrounding countries constantly bombing it and trying to kill them? Because the Christian nations stick up for them. But no one's going to stick up for the Muslim countries, are they? Who's sticking up for Palestine? Egypt? No, they don't give a shit. Jordan? No, they don't give a shit. Libya? No, they don't give a shit. Algeria? No, they don't give a shit. Ethiopia? No, they don't give a shit. And they're even Christian now. They've kicked out the Muslims. The only countries that care about Palestine is Iran and Syria. And as we know, Iran is just about to have a revolution against his Islamic government because the people don't like it. And Syria don't have any control of their own country. They are a puppet state for Iran. But what are Iran and Syria doing to help Palestine? Fucking nothing! The only reason any Palestinians still have food and aren't completely wiped out and starving and dead is because Israel are giving them aid. Christians are sending them aid. We're the only reason those guys are still alive. But they're tromping through the streets waving knives going, Allahu Akbar, death to the West. That's because of Allah. That's because Allah has told them here, and I quote, unbelievers are the biggest threat to Islam. Despite the fact that they're only alive because of us, despite the fact that Islam and Allah is sending them to war against a far superior, much stronger force with better trained, better equipped soldiers, when they have barely anything. And by the way, they are known to be terrorists and known from their own history to be trouble. That's why Egypt won't take them as refugees, why Jordan won't take them as refugees, why none of the other countries, Saudi Arabia, Libya, these guys won't take any Palestinians as refugees. Because they're fucking troublemakers. But they're not born like that. Why are the Palestinians troublemakers? Why does none of the other countries want them? Well, look how they behave in their own patch. Look at how they treat their neighbours. Even when their neighbours are giving them free, clean water at their own expense, giving them loads of food at their own expense, supplying them with everything they need, electricity, a big wall around them to keep out their enemies, training and education for their government and their troops. After all that, how do they treat their friends and neighbours, Israel? They fucking invade them for absolutely no reason, capture women and children only. Literally, they capture women and children on purpose so that they can bargain for these people as hostages. And while they are doing that, to turn up the pressure, they beat them, rape them, and then kill them. While they tell the rest of the world a pack of lies about how, oh, poor old Palestine, we didn't do anything. Nobody believes that. Why is this happening, O Muslims? Because Allah has commanded it. And look where it's got them. They are fucking screwed. Israel aren't screwed. Israel are fine. They don't like being at war with you. They're unhappy that they have to go to war with you. But they are fine. They will survive like they always do. Like we always do. Christians and Jews. So I will remind you. Allah said this would not happen. That was his prophecy that this would not happen. So how, if he is God and his Quran is accurate, how is this happening? It's the opposite of what he prophesied. He said we would be suffering diseases and curses, we would not be set up with no money, and we would be in poverty, and you guys would be killing us. But the opposite is true. We're killing you. We are not in poverty, you are. We are not destitute, you are. We don't have disease and curse, you do. We're not the ones starting the war, you are, but you're losing it. All because of Allah and his lies. And then that brings us up to 3/4 through the book. He makes a point of saying Muslims must only have the desires, goals and aspirations that Allah gives to them. So he's literally telling you here, Muslims, don't you dare have free will. Don't you have aspirations of living peacefully like these guys are. Don't you have aspirations of being educated, getting good jobs, becoming inventors, creators, writers, anything else. Your life is about one thing, O Muslims, says Allah in the book, killing Jews. Raping and killing and pillaging those guys and giving Allah the money. Are you happy with that? Is that like the scope of your ambitions in life, O Muslims? All you want to do is be a willing slave of Allah to go and rob and kill other people and then give it all away. Is that all you are? Hamsters in a wheel, constantly turning, but you're never getting anything out of it, are you? Because it's all going to Allah. Allah gives them not free will, not individuality, but aspirations to feed him. That was my last sentence on that part of the first surah is Allah gives them no free will, no individuality from themselves, only aspirations to feed him. That's what you're doing. You're feeding Allah. Allah is needy, money hungry, wants your praise and obedience for no reward. Think about it. Think about your life, O Muslims. What reward does Allah give you? How do you feel rewarded in your lives at the moment? How do you feel like Allah is paying back your loyalty, your obedience, your sweat, blood and tears? When your brothers are out on the battlefield dying in a war that they started and will lose, how are you rewarded by this? How much more rewarded would you have been if you'd have followed Christ's example, and instead of going to war with a much stronger, larger force of people or get completely wiped out by them, if you had done what Christ asked and been friendly to your neighbours and taken the gifts they were giving you and actually put them to use, rather than brainwashing a whole generation of children to wave swords and say Allahu Akbar and then go and get themselves shot in the head and die. If you'd followed Christ's example, all those children would be well educated by now. They would be, next year they'd be 17, 18, 19, 20. They'd be getting good jobs. They'd be rich. Their families would be rich. They would be happy. But no, because of Allah and his commands, they have to go to war and die for Allah. And what reward does he give you? That is my point. What reward does Allah give you? Fucking none. Death is your reward, and then you die in sin anyway. And as we know, because Allah told us, your birth is a great injustice to him. That creates a debt on you which you have to pay with your soul on the end day. So it doesn't matter how much money you give him. It doesn't matter how many Jews you kill. It doesn't matter how much you suffer or how much poverty you live in. How much you do without the things that you should have. None of that matters to Allah. All that matters is your birth was an injustice to him, and he's going to get the payback on that debt by taking your soul on the end day. Why do you follow this guy? He clearly hates your guts. He's clearly using you as a weapon. He thinks you're an idiot. No, fine, don't even follow Christ. Just be an atheist. But just think to yourself, why am I following Allah when all he does is lie to me and lead me into bad situations? Why do I work for a guy who constantly promises me rewards but gives me absolutely none? Why am I at war with these guys over here that don't want to be at war with me, are doing better than me, and if I was like them, I would be doing better myself? Then we get to the last bit. Allah makes his prophecies and constantly lies about past events to hide the failures and the incorrect prophecies that he makes. This is directly referencing the Talu and the insurgency bit. So what happens, for those of you who missed it, Allah has some insurgencies, Muslims in the desert, a small band of raiders kind of thing, and they want to go and invade Israel, which by now is a huge, powerful kingdom with walls, a big military, loads of money, technology, and according to Allah, magic. So they're able to do things with their technology that the insurgents think is fucking magic. Like, they've got TVs on the go, and the insurgencies are looking through the holes in the wall going, wow, that's magic, how are they doing that? That's Israel. But Allah says to his small band of raiders with crappy weapons and no magic, who aren't even allowed to drink from a fountain, go and kill Israel. Even though there's like 30 of you and Israel's millions of people, go and kill them, it'll be fine. And his Muslims turn around and go, Allah, we're not so sure about this. We're probably going to get killed if we do that. Are you absolutely certain we're going to win? And Allah says, sure, yeah, I'm absolutely certain you're going to win. And the proof, O Muslims, is I've created a magical relic for you called the Ark of the Covenant. Just get hold of the Ark of the Covenant and then you'll know my prophecy is true. Look, I'll even get Talu from the, the king of Israel to come over and lead you. And because you have Talu to lead you, this fucking Jew who's just left, now you'll be able to get in and beat Israel. So you think, okay, the king knows secret ways into his kingdom. He can tell all his soldiers to go to the other end of the city to allow you to win. There could be some weird magical plot here who could enable you, with Talu as your leader, O Muslims, to get into Israel and beat them. But is that what happens? Fucking no! Allah says, I only let those who only worship me win their battles. And promptly goes and sees Goliath outside of Israel. Can't kill Goliath because he's too tough. His own insurgents say, we're too scared of this guy, how are we going to beat him? And how does Goliath die? David, the next king of Israel, who hates Allah and has never worshipped him at all and worships the king and the the God of Israel. David, King David, who is the guy who put King David's Star of David on the flag of Israel after killing Goliath at this point in the story. David comes out of Israel, slays Goliath, and then goes back in. So once again, Allah's prophecy that his insurgents plus Talu would kill Goliath and invade Israel never fucking happened. Once again, we get absolutely clear 100% factual evidence in Allah's own words. You can't even say I'm biased. I'm reading this in Allah's own words in his own fucking Quran of the Muslims. He said Talu and the insurgents were going to kill Goliath, then they were going to invade Israel, then they were going to get the Ark of the Covenant. But did any of that happen? Fucking no. What actually happened is King David, who doesn't like Allah and worships someone else, beats Goliath, goes back in, and successfully defends it against 0 attacks, because at this point Talu and his insurgents leave. So in conclusion, Allah does not make good prophecies. The only reason he cooks up these stupid prophecies and appears in the cloud to give you a war cry is because he knows he can rely on your ignorance to get you to do his dirty work, and then when you die and get diseased and cursed and stricken with poverty, he can blame it on the Jews, which is exactly what he does leading up to the last piece. Allah does not keep his many promises, and we get to the very last bit where Allah is saying to his Muslims, after all this has happened in the current day, you shall not be rich, you shall not have any wealth, you shall not enjoy fine things in life. And the reason is, O Muslims, Allah says in his book, you're not allowed to make any deals, you're not allowed to take loans, you're not allowed to make loans, you're not allowed to gamble, you're not allowed to work outside of Islamic things, you're not allowed to have friends in the Christian or Jewish communities that could support you with charities, you're not allowed any of that stuff. And the reason you're not allowed it is because unless Allah's imams are there to watch and make sure that money goes back to him, you are greedy and in sin, and he will punish you. And that's the end of this video. Please, Muslims, these videos are just as much for you as they are for my Christian and atheist and Jewish viewers. I want you to realise, oh Muslims, this guy's not in your corner. This guy wants you fucking dead. Look at what he's done to your countries. Look around the world, not on Google where they're going to fill you with propaganda. Don't ask your imams at the mosque who are going to talk bollocks to you and just back up Allah so that they don't fall foul of his sin. Use your own 2 eyes and your brain. Use your intelligence. You're not stupid. Look around the world and ask yourself, if Allah's word is true, then why is everything he predicted happening in fucking reverse? The guys he said would never be set up his enemies who'd be cursed and diseased are rich, happy and well fed, and none of them have diseases or curses. Whereas his Islamic countries he said he was going to empower and make great and fill with riches are poor, starving and in poverty and not able to win any battles. So why, if Allah is telling the truth to you, O Muslim, is everything he said turned out to be false? You ask yourself that. And that's the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed that. That's the end of the heavy reading, guys. No more Quran. Now we've finished with Surah 1. We've done the recap. We know exactly how to feel about Surah 1 and Allah and the fucking bullshit that he puts in the heads of his Muslims at their detriment. We also know that it isn't the Muslims' own fault. They are brainwashed by this nonsense that he talks, forced into following it at a young age throughout their life by a culture and a family structure which begs enslavement, despite the fact that there's no reward for it. So it isn't their fault, and at any point they could realise, hang on a minute, those guys over there aren't following Allah, why don't we do that? Then we won't be in poverty, then we won't be at war, then we won't be starving, then we'll be able to have good lives and be happy. So that's what we've learnt from Surah 1. Allah's full of bullshit, can't make a prophecy to save his life, totally lies to his Muslims and other people, so that his enemies, the Jews, can be killed, but there's no other reward from him to his Muslims, who have no say in their own lives, are not allowed opinions, grief, fear, ideas or doubts. They have to just mindlessly follow the commands of Allah, even if it means their death, and if they don't, he will catch up with them and kill them. But if they don't, there's plenty of other options out there, like Christianity or even atheism, which if they accepted and tried and stopped going to the war with the rest of us, they might actually realise they will be far happier and they won't go to hell. They'll be living in grace and mercy, and they'll, in all probability, become wealthy. So that's the end of this video. I really hope you listened and you enjoyed that. Now that that's out of the way, the next few days of videos are just going to be some light-hearted stuff, maybe some funny stuff, so we can recover our hearts and minds. And then we're going to go straight on attack Surah 2 and see what we can find in there. So that's the end of this video. God bless, hope you enjoyed that. And I will see you, lovely, beautiful people, in the next one. Bye now. And so we reach the end of the first Surah, the first book of Quran. So I'm going to have a little rest for a few days now, do some light-hearted stuff, maybe some Bible or some Gospel stuff. So that's going to be nice. But in the meantime, I bid you a good night, God bless, and I will see you in the next one.